All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the UAS Tech Forum. This is day 2. We're just letting everybody come in and get settled. So come into the room, come into the virtual room, sit close, get settled, get your caffeine. Want to welcome everybody in. So we'll give you a moment here. If you did not participate yesterday morning, my name is Amanda Radovic. I'm the program manager for the UAS Cluster Initiative. The UAS Tech Forum is our anchor event of the year. It's our 7th annual event and our very first virtual event. So we had our first virtual event day yesterday, and it was really exciting. It was nice to see all the interactions. There were a lot of great conversations that took place throughout the day, and I know I personally got to visit with a lot of folks. And in this day and age, where none of us have been able to really travel or see people face to face, it was really nice to be able to see some familiar faces and catch up and be able to talk. So I want to thank you so much. So as you're getting settled in, I would love, I just want to point out a couple features. We are going to have some Q&A today with our keynote presenter, Joe Morra with FAA, a little later. So when you would like to ask a question, there's a couple ways to do that. You can type into the chat box your question, and we'll be calling on a few of those. Or you can raise your hand. There's a little raise hand feature. We'll call on you, which we will unmute you at that time, and you can ask a question. So there are a couple ways that you can participate. So make sure you have your questions queued up and ready to go. And when we get to the Q&A section, we'll try to answer as many questions as we can from our audience. So before we officially get started with our presenters today, I did want to take a moment and just thank our sponsors and our host city, Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City was scheduled to be the host of this event, this in-person event, and we just want to make sure that we recognize and show our appreciation and really spotlight all the things that they're doing, not only in Oklahoma City, but statewide. And throughout the 2 days and yesterday, as you will notice, we had some company profiles, companies that have been moving to Oklahoma and some in Kansas to do business in the region. We talked a lot about and we'll continue this conversation about the IPP, which we're fortunate enough to have one in each state that our region covers, and which we'll talk about a little bit today. And we've had a lot of university engagement, which is wonderful. The universities have been spotlighted nationwide for having some of the most progressive UAS programs and been early adopters. And so it's been really great to see all the communication. There was a whole conversation yesterday evening with industry and the universities, and it's just incredible the amount of partnerships that are taking place. So before I do that, I really want to I'm going to name drop just a few of our sponsors. I can't list them all because there's just too many, but I encourage you to go to their booths today, say hello, and learn about what programs they're doing and how they're helping to grow the UAS industry. But I do want to specifically thank the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, the Oklahoma State University, Metro Technology Centers, and we have a guest speaker here today who's going to tell us a little bit more about that, University of Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. And again, this barely scratches the surface of all of the sponsors who've supported this event to make it happen, but I did want to drop a few names there. So we do have a number of amazing guest speakers today, and I'm going to get to it here because we have a packed morning. And our very, very first keynote, our guest speaker today, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker, is the Superintendent of Metro Technology Centers, Aaron Collins. And Aaron is newer to the position. He was brought in this year to serve as the Superintendent for Metro Technology Centers. He comes from us. He was previously in Oklahoma, and he came to us from Kentucky. And while he was getting settled, his family stayed in student housing. And so I just love that. I love that as you're getting settled, you came and stayed in student housing with the Oklahoma Christian University, who is you are an alumni. Yeah, and so they were kind enough to let you and your family stay there as you got settled. But you bring a wealth of experience to the position, and we're very excited to have you as part of this ecosystem and with Metro Technology Centers. So with that, I will let you take it from there, and thank you, Aaron, for being with us today.
Well, Amanda, thank you for the introduction. It's great to be a part of UAS and to be a part of aviation here in the great state of Oklahoma. Metro Tech Centers is a career and technology center. We have 4 campuses. One of those campuses being at the Aviation Center. We're really proud of our partnership with Oklahoma Career Tech, with Will Rogers Airport, and the opportunity that we have there. In just a moment, going to be introducing Joe. But Joe, I don't know if you know this or not, we actually have an MD-80 there on campus at the Aviation Center. So anytime you want to come and crank that thing up, you just let me know, and we'd love to have you in Oklahoma City and crank that up for us one day. So, but we're proud to be of the career tech system, and we're proud of the relationships that we have. We have a partnership with Rose State College, and we're grateful for that. We have A&P certificates. We have many things going on with aviation maintenance and with aerospace and drones. And as Joe's gonna talk about, you know, drones are cool, and we have a certification class for drones, but also there is a need to be safe when flying these drones. And as more drones are in the air, there's more opportunity then for crashes to happen, right, Joe? As you have more in the air. And so it's important to be safe, but we're so excited about you guys, Amanda, choosing Oklahoma City and our area, and to be able to see the many companies that we have here in Oklahoma City. But Joe, it's great to have you today. Joe being the director of the Federal Aviation Administration Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration Office, works with the Safety and Integration Division, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of safety, and I'm excited to have Mr. Morra with us today, and to be able to be our keynote speaker. Mr. Morra, welcome. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Looks like my box turned green, so hopefully people are hearing me here. Yeah, I do want to compliment, first of all, you know, colleges and universities and community colleges too. We actually did just announce at our FAA symposium, co-hosted by UBSI, that we did start a collegiate training initiative. So we've been signing agreements with colleges and universities across the country right now, which we're going to be kicking off next month. And that's an open program that you can find on our website to help foster the relationship between an information share between government and industry and universities like yourself that are actually having drone programs. So that's fantastic news. So yeah, thank you very much for the welcome, and I want to thank Amanda and actually everybody here at the forum. This is a great opportunity, and we're seeing a lot of these great opportunities come out of a very kind of extraordinary year. So so happy to be able to do this event. Happy to be able to kick it off on the second day. I got to see Brian Wynn from AUVSI do the keynote yesterday, and a lot of the things that I'll be talking about hopefully will pique some interest, talk about the programs that we run out of the integration office, what the FAA is doing in general regarding the integration pilot program, some of the COVID-19 responses, and some of the upcoming things that we've got on there that I know there's probably interest in, like UTM, unmanned traffic management, and remote identification, which is a rule that's out for finalization fairly soon. So with that, I would like to say also, Oklahoma is close to my heart because any inspector that's hired with the FAA, and that's where I came through as an aviation safety inspector, we get to spend at least 9.5 weeks out in the academy in Oklahoma City, and great experiences out there, great facility, and Oklahoma has always been fantastic to us. So thank you. So with that, I would like to just kind of start off with some of the challenges that we've seen here in aviation in general, dealing with COVID. You know, airlines, air traffic have been way down, but in general, we've actually seen accelerated demand for UAS operations. So one of the things that we did initially was we put together a playbook, and we were we were prepared to really deal with quite a few requests to conduct operations during COVID. What we did find, very interestingly, was that it's very similar to normal aviation philosophy that you train what you fly, fly what you train. So those that were best positioned to actually do meaningful operations during COVID and continue to right now are the ones that already held more advanced Part 107 waivers, or that have Part 135 air carrier certifications for package delivery. So they were able to basically apply their lessons learned. For example, UPS Flight Forward, who's our second air carrier to be certificated, they have a will carry hazmat program, a hazardous materials program. So they were actually already poised to identify things that could be carried and could not be carried, and you see a lot of that around COVID. So also to highlight a little bit more about what's been going on with that, we've seen more operations occurring even within our general rule, Part 107 rule, that allows visual line of sight. It allows operations to occur as long as you don't go over people, stay below 400 feet, delivering things like medical supplies and samples that are not hazardous materials. So you'll hear me talk a little bit more about that too. So our workforce has also had to adapt to this environment. So you're literally invited into my home today, and many of the policy offices and those of us that work in Washington, D.C. that aren't air traffic controllers or currently keeping the NAS up and working, we've actually adapted to this world of Zoom, this world of virtual meetings, and we've been leveraging that too, even in our inspection and authorization and validation activities, to do some virtual activities, such as working with our most recent air carrier, which is not associated with the integration pilot program right now, but Amazon, which was recently in the news. So our workforce has really been demonstrating that they are nimble, and they've been creative in delivering the safety mission. So what we've done is we've actually seen that some of our activities have been accelerated here. We've learned how to engage a little bit better with stakeholders, and even our outreach activities, like what we're doing right now. Certain things that would be travel intensive, we're able to take part of. So once again, I'm thrilled to be able to fit in the middle of the day a trip to Oklahoma virtually, and hopefully affect some positive change and take some questions here. So the next part really that I wanted to talk about that seems to be of interest is the integration pilot program. So this was a presidentially mandated program that started 3 years ago, and we're coming to an end of that iteration the next month. So it really has been for us an unqualified success. Partnering with 9 state, local, and tribal lead participants, which you'll hear me highlight a few here, but the 2 that I'd like to highlight most is Choctaw Nation, Oklahoma, and also Kansas Department of Transportation, which I believe Bob Brock is involved in this conference too. So they've been fantastic partners, and what made the integration pilot program a little bit different is that normally if we work with industry or we work on approvals for exemptions or waivers or authorizations, you're working with the actual industry partner directly, the applicant. When we're working through the IPP, what we really wanted to leverage was working with the state, local, tribal governments, because UAS affects the local environment just as much as it does the federal environment, probably even more, because if something's going to be occurring not 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 30,000 feet over your house, but much closer to your communities and your neighborhoods, integration of those activities really has to occur at a local level too. So it's been really interesting to us to be partnered with not only cities, but some state DOTs. North Carolina is another DOT that we're involved with, to the tribal nation of, and I have to mention that Choctaw, it's been super exciting for us and me personally that we deal a lot with government entities that conduct public aircraft operations. And due to the 2018 FAA reauthorization from Congress, it actually put in language that allowed for tribal nations to conduct public aircraft operations as well as other government entities in the United States. So we're really proud to work with Choctaw and have them go through the process to become the first tribal nation conducting public aircraft. And when you conduct a public aircraft operation, many of you probably know, you as the government entity actually assumes responsibility for the airworthiness determination of the aircraft, because you're not conducting a civil operation, you're actually a public government entity. And things like pilot certification in that realm, most will choose to use our certification processes, but that's also something that's applicable specifically to civil operations. So there is some flexibility also in and responsibility that comes with conducting PAO when you are doing things that Choctaw Nation is doing right now. So back to the IPP, I just wanted to give some stats here and some highlights. So Virginia, working with one of their team members, Wing Aviation. One of the monumental things in the IPP for us was Wing, which is a Google associated company. In April of 2019, we're the first ones to receive a air carrier certificate, a Part 135 air taxi, air carrier, air operator certificate. And what that has done is they've actually been conducting deliveries in Christiansburg, Virginia. And to date, they've probably delivered over about 1,500 packages right now. But when COVID hit, they've got operations going on not only in Christiansburg, but they've got operations, actual delivery operations going on in Helsinki and Finland and Australia. And I know they reached a total worldwide of 1,000 deliveries in 1 week when you look at all 4 of those areas. So once again, this was an opportunity to have somebody that's got the manuals, got the procedures, has the training curriculum to really flex. And I think in Christiansburg, they had an announcement that their deliveries either doubled or tripled just for normal items that became kind of essential during COVID. So the second package delivery operation was UPS Flight Forward. I mentioned that before. And they actually partnered with somebody in North Carolina, Matternet, who had been doing deliveries under Part 107, because as long as you keep it within visual line of sight and you operate fully in compliance with that rule, you are not triggering the things that are required of an air carrier. So they had been doing missions between across the hospital campus on WakeMed in Raleigh, North Carolina. So once UPS Flight Forward fully partnered with them, that's become a normal thing now. So they've done over 1,000 drone medical deliveries right now, and they've actually served more than 4,500 patients. And we're working our IPP final report right now, and hearing some of the quotes from the doctors down there, even what took a 20-minute drive across town and traffic with samples to get across this medical complex is now a 2-minute drone flight, and it's reliable, and it's just expected that they put their samples and it flies across the campus. 2 other things, North Carolina and North Dakota also did in the spring of 2019 and 20, both hurricane assessments and flooding assessments, and both were able to show economic and societal benefits to safety of roads, to getting people access back to infrastructure, lots of things that are hard to calculate the benefits of, but we're trying to learn through this program a lot more about what economic benefits and societal benefits really we can codify, because when we do any type of rule, and I'll mention remote ID coming up, we have to do a economic analysis, and we actually have to do the cost and benefits benefit analysis of levying a rule upon people that is an enabling rule, but we're always looking for those stories of how will the rule actually increase safety in these cases and lower costs for other things. We sometimes give the example of one of the road departments has said it's essentially $400 a minute every minute that they can't clear a highway to traffic. And they have numbers behind the opportunity loss costs and trucking costs and all that. But that's important to us because we want to start capturing that better. I did mention Kansas DOT. They, among other things, they've taken a really good approach to really leveraging their aviation history in Kansas, which is a super rich aviation history in manufacturing and operations. And they've structured their program in a way that is really repeatable and is really a really solid foundation for building the next level. So now that they're up in the air and flying, they've done things like looking at aging tops of power lines that could potentially pose safety risk. And they've been able to focus drone inspections in areas that are most relevant to that. So they're doing some really great work. And Choctaw, just recently too, they've been looking into the meteorological effects, and they were able to do drone damage assessments after a tornado that actually gave the National Weather Service data to develop a better tornado severity index. So lots of things have come out of this. Chula Vista, I have to mention that, in San Diego too. They're one of the really interesting partners with San Diego, the city of San Diego, because they've actually deployed drones as first responders in their area where the police department works. And basically they dispatch drones on 911 calls, and they've completed more than 3,100 missions, and they attribute over 400 arrests to drones helping with those. So that has been a really interesting thing. And they have a great website too that actually shows some videos of the example we give sometimes, and that is they responded to an individual that had what appeared to be a firearm and or a handgun, and the drone was able to dispatch to the site before officers got on scene. And the anomaly that they noticed was that the person lit a cigarette with what was appearing to be a handgun. So they were able to communicate to the police arriving on scene to de-escalate the response. So you wouldn't have had that view if you couldn't get the drone there quickly. And I think they took their response time to be on scene from minutes down to that they now count it in seconds. And I believe some of the numbers have been like 190 seconds or so when they can actually have eyes on scene. We've also seen some of the challenges through the IPP and the other programs that we work too, but beyond visual line of sight is one of our major hurdles that we need to address. So whether it's power line inspections, pipeline inspections, we are working hard behind the scenes for rules that will enable this, but we have taken a path towards enabling safe operations now, which we can do through exemptions, through waivers, through deviations, authorizations. And what we are finding is we've pushed the limits of what a basic rule like Part 107 can do. And even if you're doing operations with some of our partners like Xcel Energy or Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, BNSF, their operations are starting to look a lot more like an air carrier operation. They're starting to, even though they're not carrying anything, it's more about your manuals, your procedures, your training curriculum, your the pilots and dispatch procedures, all these things that are normally identified in our rules that weren't necessarily built for drones, but we're leveraging them and we're flexing them to learn more so that we can actually produce better rules. And Brian Wynn mentioned something that's really close to our hearts, and that's performance-based rules. We're really working hard to whether it be through standards groups, whether it be through the actual rule language itself. You'll see trends in all of our rules that try to make the desired safety outcome codified in the rule, not the means by which you get to that outcome. So we're trying not to say you must use a particular technology to satisfy this rule. We're trying to say what the outcome would be and hope for innovation, work with industry, work with standards groups, and you may have multiple means of compliance with a performance-based rule versus a prescriptive rule. So that transitions nicely into some of our safety risk management that we've done. So another accomplishment that we exercised in the integration pilot program for the first time was we produced a safety risk management order specific to UAS, which is available to the public. It's the 8040.6 order, so FAA order 8040.6. And we base that also on some international lessons learned, JARIS SORA, specific operations risk assessment. So that has elements of the common hazards built into that too. So like I said, that's publicly available, and you can go to our website. We have all these documents that I've been throwing out there, even information on the pilot program here. And I do have to put in a shameless plug for another thing that our division runs. We run the UAS Support Center. So Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. till 4 p.m., we have live people that will actually pick up the phone, and you won't be on hold for very long at all. And we answer, between phone calls and emails weekly, we answer anywhere from a couple hundred to 500 or more. So that's 844-FLY-MY-UA or UAShelp@FAA.gov. So next, all these things, what we're enabling right now is really working towards a whole UTM concept, the unmanned traffic management concept of integration. So many of the operations that we've done so far, even Part 107 for that matter, is really segregating things. You're staying away from other air traffic. You're staying within visual line of sight. You're staying out of controlled airspace without specific authorization. Our goal is really to work with some of our partners like NASA, work through things like the UPP, the UAS pilot program also, the UTM pilot program, I'm sorry, to explore how you could develop a federated system that's basically many providers operating by similar rules, working in a common environment. So the idea is that given the scale of UAS operations, we probably will not be able to, and we are not planning to provide air traffic control services like we do right now for airlines or anybody operating under instrument flight rules. What we are working towards is that environment so that everybody knows how to mesh together. And I wanted to mention too that there is a UTM concept of operations that we published the second version a few months ago that's also available on the website. And then that brings us to our, I'm trying to throw out some topics here that I'm sure Amanda can throw some questions at here too. The urban air mobility or advanced air mobility. So we've held at least 2 roundtables where we've been working with industry and NASA again too, to really help identify the framework of all the things that will need to go into heavy cargo carrying or passenger carrying drones. And the difference is these, on a safety continuum, these are not treated specifically like drones. A lot of them are treated just like we treat our certificated aircraft right now. They're going to have to meet similar standards. They're going to have to, the propulsion system might be different, but the safety standards are all the same. And what we've found through this is even our safety risk management process, we focus on basically 3 things. We focus on the operator, the environment, and the aircraft. But with UAM and AAM, there's also other things to consider. There's the infrastructure and the community. So we're able to take a lot of the lessons learned even from the community impacts with cities and localities that we've learned through the IPP and translate that into some of these larger operations too. Infrastructure is really relying on where are these going to land? What's the power supplies going to them? Are they going to be on airports? Are they going to be off airports? So we are excited. I love what we get to do in the FAA, and we're working very hard to provide an environment where that we can allow for industry to innovate. You don't want us to provide the innovation. We should be the innovators of the regulations and the innovators of trying to get operations, safe operations, up and enabled sooner rather than later so we can learn. So with that, I will hand back over to Amanda, and I see some questions may have been coming in here.
Well, thank you, Joe. Yeah, a lot of questions, which is absolutely what I anticipated this morning. You touched on a lot of topics that have been a kind of a running theme, not only through our event, but through a lot of other events. I know we had the ability to attend the FAA Symposium a couple weeks ago as well. So excited to have you here. So just a reminder to the audience, you can type questions in the chat or you can raise your hand and we can call on you and you can ask Joe a question. So really whatever you prefer. But there's quite a few here. So you mentioned, we will be talking about this. We have several IPPs that are represented in a session later this afternoon, and they're going to talk about kind of what's next. And so from your perspective, you know, the IPP program is coming to a close, and are there any plans to extend the program or do a sort of a revised version of the program? What do you anticipate is going to happen with the IPP program as it comes to a close?
So yes, there are plans to continue. So the activities will continue because the program was presidentially mandated and to the Secretary of Transportation. That particular activity will wrap up and the Secretary will provide back the final report this January. But what we've done is we've been engaging with the lead participants, and they're already aware too. We're working because they've already gotten to a point where they've tested a lot of the things that they brought to the table, the diversity that they brought through our selection process, and what they wanted to focus on. So now the new iteration or the continuation will be to focus on beyond visual line of sight, especially, and then some of the community, societal, and economic benefits too. Some of the outreach that they all do, some of the surveys that they do. So yes, we do plan to continue, and it's there'll be more coming up, but we're going to tighten it down into focusing on the areas that really need attention, like beyond visual line of sight. And it's interesting because not all beyond visual line of sight is the same. What Chula Vista is doing is they need to go beyond visual line of sight around the next building so that they can follow somebody, versus Excel Energy or some of the other lead participant partners that want to go 10, 15 miles down a railroad track or a power line. So we're kind of breaking it down between the variations of beyond visual line of sight and then also the areas where they want to operate, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban. But there's more to come.
Yeah, a lot of use cases, definitely. Another question we got here, and I know this is kind of $1 million question. So they say Walmart recently announced that it would soon begin offering delivery service via drones, and much like its competitor, Amazon. How long do you envision drone deliveries really taking hold across the US and becoming an ordinary thing to see in our skies on a daily basis? And here's the cincher. What is it going to take for us to get there? Okay.
Well, we are poised and we're excited, and we've been working with a lot of these companies and a lot of these partners for years. The biggest thing right now is there's over 40 aircraft that are in the type certification process. So whether it be Amazon or Wing or UPS Flight Forward, they're operating right now with exemptions and with some authority that we've leveraged through the statutory language of 44807, determining that the aircraft does not pose risk due to its size, weight, speed, operational capabilities. So really the next big hurdle, and they're all going through this right now, is proving the reliability of those aircraft, which the type certificate will help out with quite a bit. And then the same challenge really applies with beyond visual line of sight. It becomes, how are you going to detect or see or be able to avoid other non-participating air traffic? So you've got the ground risk through the reliability of the aircraft. You've got the air risk of some of the sensors and the strategies and the equipment that they're using. You know, what I like to say is they actually are doing actual deliveries right now. So it is a reality as of today. How much it'll be scaled is really more on industry, because the airspace is a natural resource. And if we can, if somebody can actively participate in that airspace and provide benefit and provide, my gosh, we've seen some of the COVID benefits with this, then we do want to encourage the you know, expansion of aviation activities. So I can't tell you exactly how soon we'll see it all, but I know in Amazon's recent press release, they carry 5-pound packages, and I believe it's over 80% of the Amazon deliveries are 5 pounds or less. So there could be there could be a lot of these going on, and honestly, it's the benefits not only to safety but to the environment too. We're starting to hear a lot more of that.
Yeah, you touched on some of the pandemic response. We had a number of you know, webinars or spoke to companies who had done some pretty quick pivots and were able to get waivers quicker than, you know, maybe they would have in normal times, whatever those looked like. And that was a big thing for them to be able to change course, get the waivers quickly, and help with pandemic efforts. So it was really fascinating to see that and hear their stories. And I know you mentioned that a couple times. So yeah, definitely something that was interesting to track and see that happen.
Yeah, and our biggest lesson with that is, regardless of whether it's aviation or any kind of emergency response activity, you don't want to be standing up your operation in the thick of the emergency. You actually want to have your operation established and have your procedures established, and then just be able to tweak it for the emergency, whether it be an airspace access or some other procedure. But that's where we've seen the challenges. You know, many people came and said, if the FAA would let us do this, we could help with COVID more. And honestly, we want to do that, but we ask the same questions. Okay, what's your, you know, what about your pilots? What about the reliability of your aircraft? What about your experience with operations or maintenance, those types of things? So that's where we're hoping that, you know, more people will definitely be poised and ready come the next or continuation of pandemics across the world here. So
yeah, any kind of, you know, disaster response or anything. We've seen that with hurricanes, fires, where companies were really quickly able to get out there and provide service and provide relief services. So it's been interesting to see that over the years.
And that's good for your audience too. We have the special governmental interest, SGI process. If you search that on our website, we actually have the form up there too on how you can request access to a temporary flight restriction associated with a hurricane or natural disaster. And since that process has really been started maybe 3 years ago plus, it's now they can deal with hundreds of these requests, and they can usually turn them in minutes when somebody's familiar with the system. So,
that's great.
Okay.
Well, we have a question from one of our industry partners, and I like this because it's asking a little bit about the next gen workforce in STEM, which we had a really lively conversation about that last night. Will FAA focus next gen workforce STEM funding to UAS, UTM, UAM? And there's a link here talking about that Congress is urging DOT, FAA to release funds for workforce programs. What are you seeing in those areas?
So I can't really speak to the next gen funding part of it. We were on with one of the chief scientists this morning, though, who does control a lot of that. I can speak to the, we are committed through things like the Collegiate Training Initiative. We are committed through supporting STEM, and honestly, my coming from a flight training background, it's been really exciting for me to see 16, 17, 18-year-olds that already have experience in aviation operating drones that have gotten into aviation at a much easier threshold than it is to go through your traditional pilot training and operate aircraft. So I think the FAA will definitely continue to focus on encouraging those activities, because it is also opening up the doors to a lot more people to be involved in aviation. And we like to say that, welcome pilots. When Part 107 first came out and we started doing pilot certification back in 2016, and I was reading the numbers this morning, we now have over 190,000 remote pilots. So that in itself says a lot. So I can't answer specifically on next gen and the STEM, but like I said, we do support a lot of STEM, and we do support a lot of training initiatives right now, and we'll continue to.
Well, we're running out of time, but I do have one more question I want to ask you, and this may be maybe the toughest question of the morning. When do you see the final regulations in place for remote ID? What are areas of concerns that still need to be addressed before final implementation? So we also are going to have a remote ID discussion this afternoon. Obviously, it's been something that was mentioned all through day one. Now that we have you here, what can you tell us about remote ID and the implementation?
So we're still pushing to have, some of it's out of our control, because once it leaves the FAA too and leaves DOT for interagency and other OIRA coordinations, but we're still pushing for end of the year publication of the final rule. We have a whole slew of implementation activities going on internally, because like any rule, this one especially has different timelines for implementation of things. I have to be very deliberately vague on this topic, because although I'm not a lawyer, we do have to avoid ex parte communication when we talk about an ongoing rule. But the rule itself is really exciting to us, because it's the next step. It's essentially, when you look at the basics of it, it's, we put out a registration rule, which was the first thing. You need to get registration and know basically who's operating, who's in the pool of operators. We got our first operational rule out there for Part 107. And then this is really the next step to essentially create a digital license plate. And it's got a lot of security implications too, with local law enforcement and security partners. So we're still shooting for end of the year. We are working hard behind the scenes on how that would be implemented, but unfortunately we'll have to wait for the final rule to come out to see, because that was also monumental to deal with 53,000 comments. That a normal rule, I think Part 107 had about 4,600 comments, which was a lot for a FAA rule. So to step it up to 53,000 was, and we have to adjudicate all those comments. So, which was done. It's already been done. So
that's great. It's a huge effort.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning and answering everybody's questions and giving us updates on what's happening. Obviously, there's just some very common themes that are running through all these conversations over the last day, and that will continue today. So as I mentioned, we've got our breakout sessions are coming up, and we're going to feature some information. We're going to really dig into remote ID a little bit more. So I don't know if you participate in that conversation from the sidelines and put some notes.
Probably better if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've got also some sessions about, you mentioned utilities. So we're going to be talking about UAS and utility uses. We're going to be talking about the federal labs and some of the technologies. We've got some speakers from NASA and some of the great labs who are developing UAS technologies. And then at the end of the day, I'm particularly excited for this session because we're going to talk about not only IPP, we're going to learn from some of the states and what they're doing, but a state session. So we have representatives from states that are doing a lot of work in helping grow the industry and have put a lot of money into the industry to talk about what is working for them as they create incentives, as they grow the industry, as they attract companies to their states. So we're very excited to learn from them what worked, maybe what didn't work. But I want to thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to Superintendent Aaron Collins. We're very excited to have the support of all of our partners, including Metro Technology Centers. So Aaron, welcome back to Oklahoma. Thank you for being with us this morning. And thank you so much, Joe. And if there's any follow-up questions that you have for our speakers this morning, you can schedule one-on-one meetings. You can find Joe in the speakers list or find Aaron in the speakers list and send them questions. So that's also an option if for some reason we didn't get to answer your question this morning, or if you just want to chat a little further. So thank you so much. And we will take a short break, and then we'll be back for some breakout sessions.
Thanks, Amanda.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care.